Tú eres muy malo. Roto el pato de vestuario. La interpretación siempre negativa. Siempre negativa. Nunca positiva.
Welcome to Siempre Positivo. After a sensational performance from Barcelona, saw them tonk Valencia 7-1 at the Olympic Stadium on Sunday. I'm Sam Marsden, joined by Rik Sharma and Tony Juan Marti. Rik, how are you?
Not too bad, a little bit sleepy. We're recording this pretty early in the day. For full disclosure, it's about 10:15 and I woke up at 9:50 because we had planned to record at 10.
Yeah, it's probably as close to recording after a match as we can get. I think maybe we've done a couple immediately after the match, but we're talking 11 hours since the game finished. Still fresh.
We recorded a couple outside the stadium, standing up. When all three of us are at the game and have got time right after the game to record, I think occasionally we can do that. Although there's always some strange noises. Then I remember there was once like a garbage cart that was making some noise as it drove past us.
We tried to record in the press room once, but I always get very nervous because the guy's trying to kick us out and Tony's having none of it. Tony's always prepared to battle the security guy to make sure that we can stay in and then record, and I'm getting really sort of English nervousness about me.
Yeah. We're too polite to sit in there and delay their going home time.
Yeah. Tony, how are you? Good weekend?
Good morning. Nice weekend, from... Since yesterday I'm on holidays, but I have even worked more in the last 48 hours than when I'm officially working. So after this pod, I will try to 100% be offline during 7 days. So
Wait. But then who is going to publish the Tech Szczesny propaganda?
I don't know. The same who can write about Iñaki's propaganda, no? The same one. See, I need a break, so probably I'll go to Switzerland because I have realized that here in Barcelona I'm not able to be offline and to reset my mind. So I will probably go tomorrow 3 or 4 days to Switzerland to visit my nephews. So yeah, that's what it is.
On a serious note, I'm not sure how Tony's gonna cope being off for 7 days with the transfer window open. We know how desperate he is. Not desperate, but how he can't let sort of let a lead lie. And if anything develops with Rashford, it's going to be a very, very difficult week for Tony. But moving back 24 hours and less than 24 hours, I've just said I've lost the plot there. Moving back 11 hours. And Barcelona's 7-1 win over Valencia. It was over inside the first 15 minutes, really. Barca absolutely blowing Valencia out the water with a fast start. Frenkie de Jong with the first goal. Ferran Torres with the second. Rafinha with the third. And Barcelona were gone. A Fermin Lopez brace made it 5-0 before half-time. There were a couple of moments for Valencia. There was a penalty shout on Almeida. There was a penalty for a foul by Szczesny on Hugo Duro as well, which was overturned because of an earlier foul on Jules Koundé, referee. The new Valencia manager, Carlos Corberan, I'm not really wanting to talk about the mistakes, obviously, the decisions from the referee after the game, obviously based on the fact that his team had just been walloped 7-1 into the second half. Hugo Duro did pull Valencia back briefly, probably a slight exaggeration, but he got them on the score sheet, made it 5-1. Robert Lewandowski off the bench made it 6-1, and then a Cesar Terrega own goal made it 7-1. Rik, there was no Pedri, he had a stomach bug. There was no Dani Olmo, he was still injured. In came Fermin Lopez, 2 goals, 2 assists. Frenkie de Jong grabbed a goal. There was also a start for Ferran Torres, who scored 1. Hansi Flick said he should have scored more. Interestingly, as you maybe sort of touched on there before with Tony, there was a start for Tech Szczesny as well, but it was a good night for Barcelona in terms of rotating the squad a little bit and getting an absolutely thumping win once again.
It was the perfect match, said Hansi Flick after the game. It was a great game for Barca. Of course, the issue for us and for anyone looking at Barca is to try and work out how much of this win is down to Valencia being absolutely awful, because they were absolutely awful, especially in defence, especially in the middle of defence, where Barca just rolled down the pitch like an army strolling into a city without anyone there to stop them, time and time again. So, I mean, that is absolutely a factor. And then how much of it do we give credit to, the players, for example, that Flick used in this game, to Ferran Torres, for example, instead of Robert Lewandowski, for being someone who moved so much and vacated the space in the box that allowed players like Frankie de Jong or Fermin Lopez to get in the box and get in behind and score the goals. Or, for example, can you read into things like Szczesny starting this game? I think you probably can. And certainly, given what Flick said after the game, for him, it seems like Szczesny's going to be the number one in the next few weeks, despite what happened against Benfica. So it seems like that's Flick's bet. For me, I think the fact Valencia was so bad doesn't tarnish the victory, but it does mean we can't say Barca are completely back on track in La Liga. You know, they've won. This is their second win in 9 games in La Liga. So, I mean, next weekend against Alaves is another chance at home to get another win and get more confidence. But the truth will come after those 2 games. We said these games were the opportunities to do that, and we'll see how the land lies in maybe 3 or 4 weeks.
Obviously, you've touched on lots of things there, which we'll come back to, especially sort of Szczesny, Fermin's performance. But just on the Valencia thing, I kind of have 2 thoughts, 2 sort of opinions on it. The first is that, I don't know, I feel like, I don't know if we do or a lot of people do. I feel like whenever Barcelona win, and well, first of all, I just want to say I don't want to use this to say, like you say, Barca are back just because they beat Valencia 7-1, etc. But on the nature of the win, sometimes I do feel like people say more than us, just other people in general. Well, it was only Rayo Valladolid. It was only but not. There's not many teams going out and winning by 7 goals every week. Valencia have conceded before yesterday. They conceded 29 and 20 in the Liga since the start of the year. They lost to Real Madrid 2-1. They were winning 1-0 until late in the game, and Real Madrid scored 2 goals. Since that game, they've conceded 1 in the next 4. This was a team that Flick actually mentioned before the game had been defending quite well. They've had a sort of a new manager bounce under Carlos Corberán, and that doesn't negate that they were bad yesterday. Obviously, they were without Carlos Mosquera, who was suspended. Corberán said he didn't think it was to do with
Christian Mosquera.
It was just to do with Christian Mosquera. Yeah. Corberán said it wasn't to do with missing players, it was just the team. But I just think you have to give Barca their credit at some point. This is a team that's now scored 101 goals this season in 32 games in all competitions. That's over 3 per game. They've scored 7 on 2 occasions. They've scored 5 on, I think it's 8 occasions, 4 on 4 occasions. I mean, can you just say that's down to 14 teams being crap when some of those teams are Bayern, Real Madrid? I mean, Valencia are still... Defensively, they've been quite good this season. So I think you have to give...
We have praised Barca after scoring 5 against Real Madrid, after scoring 4 against Bayern. And I think we do have to criticise Valencia for being crap in this game. They have been good under Corberán, I agree. They've responded well, seem to be bouncing back. But I mean, as they said, as Jose Luis Gaya, Valencia captain, said after the game, this was an enormous step backwards. I mean, the way that he spoke after the game shows how bad Valencia was. If they've been ripped apart by an utterly unstoppable team, and Barca were very good, no doubt about that. But I don't think his tone would have been so apologetic to the fans.
Yeah, well, Barca could have scored more in the first half. Ferran missed a few. They were getting in behind quite easily. So you have to give credit to Barca as well. Tony, what did you make of the game? I know you like to keep your feet on the floor.
Well, I'm sorry because I'm having some problems with my internet. But I think the game was so easy for Barca, no? Because when you see a team like this not being able to defend and trying to be brave and going to press, for me it was to just Valencia suicide himself. So it was an incredible mistake of the coach Carlos Corberán. For me, he should be sacked automatically. You need automatically. For me, it's the biggest shit I have seen on a coach in the last year. So you are in the last positions of La Liga. You go to Montjuic against Barca, and you are there with not very good team to press high. Okay, if you are Liverpool, Bayern, you can do it. But you are Valencia and you go there to press high instead of checking other games like Las Palmas or Leganés. These teams that hurted Barca being together defending, and you let him with the spaces to run on the back. But what's that mess? Incredible. No. If it wasn't because, for example, Ferran was not really clinical yesterday, could have been 52-0, like the scores of these games of some playing in Celebrate, it's incredible. It's incredible. So disappointing. The game was finished after 13 minutes, and it was only because of this crazy guy called Carlos Corberán. So, the easiest game since Hansi Flick is Barca's coach.
The irony is why Valencia have actually been quite good defensively under Corberán. Since Corberán arrived, he sort of fixed the defence. And then they come and do this.
Yeah, incredible. So, and then now we could praise every, like we do in Barcelona. ¿Cómo se dice? Hinchar? To hinchar demasiado, inflar?
To inflate, blow up the balloon.
We could inflate now to say that Balde is the new Cafu, Fermín is the new Iniesta, Ferran is better than Lewandowski, Rafinha is Ballon d'Or, Frankie is back and needs to be... We could say everything, but for me, it would be fake. No conclusions after this game, no conclusions, because it's not valid. Because if we now say, no, Frankie is back and next weekend we see the reality against a good team, then our listeners will say, these guys are stupid. They were telling me that all these players were top last week, so we cannot change as if we were drunk people. For me, yes, good performance of several players and the whole Barca with intensity. Flick said that he wanted fresh legs, and that's what they showed. Hungry team, pressing, perfect. But I wouldn't give extra credit because it was Valencia who destroyed themselves.
Tony, you mentioned a few players there who were obviously Fermín with 2 goals and 2 assists was probably the one that you single out in terms of just the performance that not necessarily he needed, but you felt that he possibly deserved this season. He's obviously perhaps the one player who's not had enough minutes, who perhaps deserved is not the quite word, where you sometimes sort of feel like, it's a shame you can't get Fermín in. And obviously he's not a charity case, and you can't just give him money for the sake of it when you've got Pedri, Olmo, etc. ahead of him. But it was nice for him to get those goals and the assists because he was obviously so clinical last season. And even though Rik tells me the stats aren't too different in terms of XG and goals, it does feel like he had lost a little bit of that touch at times this season. So that was nice. And you also touched on Balde as well, which was quite interesting because Flick was asked about him. And he was asked about Ferran Torres, 2 players you touched on there who obviously came in, Balde not coming in. He actually did say that Ferran Torres should have scored 2 or 3 more goals and that Ferran thinks that as well. So his appraisal of Ferran Torres was quite sort of bang on the nail really. And on Balde, he touched on him saying that he's a player who's doing good. Basically said he's a confidence player, and he said he is doing really good at the moment. But he also said that he can improve a lot, last pass, crosses. So Flick wasn't really blowing hot air, blowing up balloons into these players after the game anyway, was he really, Rik, in terms of those sort of players that Tony singled out? He was very sort of complimentary of the performance, but he was also sort of, like Tony says, Balde can still improve a lot. Ferran should have scored 2 or 3 more.
Yeah, I actually think when Barca win big and Flick is happy, he often says the most interesting things in his press conferences. Because that's when... Because he can see he doesn't want to get too overboard on things, Occasionally he says, it was unbelievable when he's asked about the game. But then when he actually is asked about specific players, then he really does start to give his opinion on the players and their performances and what they need to do to play more. And in fact, yesterday came up with a nice anecdote that you shared in the Discord about Gavi, which he just came up with that on his own, Flick. No one asked him about Gavi specifically, but Flick said that Gavi, his favourite thing from the game was in fact that Gavi said when he was asked to go on and play for the last 15-20 minutes, said, why don't you put Pablo Torre on instead? And I think it's interesting. You can look at it in 2 ways. One is that's nice of Gavi to be a good compañero and to say, Pablo Torre should get some minutes in this game, where obviously Barca don't need a first team player to come on, and it is a game where Pablo Torre could get a goal or an assist or something in the final stages and gets a few minutes which he hasn't been having. Of course, you can look at it the other way and be like, to be honest, if the coach is fully in control of his squad, maybe players should just do what they're told, not suggest things to the coach like that. But I'm more the former camp and say, it's nice little anecdote, nice little thing. But Flick wasn't over the top with this win. I think, unlike what Tony said, I think you can take a few things away, right? Because it's some of it's not just this game; it's multiple games. It's when Lewandowski's been rested, Barca have put 5 past Betis, they put 5 past Mallorca, and they put 7 past Valencia. There is something to be said about the fluidity of the team when there's a player who's more mobile up front than Lewandowski. I think even before Flick talks about the goalkeeper after the game, the fact that Szczesny was starting was already a big piece of evidence that Flick prefers Szczesny now to Iñaki Peña. Because after what happened against Benfica, it would be very easy to not play Szczesny in these games, but he's played Szczesny, and I think it shows that he wants Szczesny. He believes Szczesny can be better than Iñaki Peña. I don't think Szczesny at the moment is better, or he's not much worse either, but he's not better. But Flick believes that he's got room to be better than Iñaki Peña.
That's what in my opinion, a lot of people do not understand of Hansi Flick's decision. And that's why you have never been a football player. I will tell you, Rik. Iñaki Peña, for Hansi Flick, is a 7 that in crucial games will be a 7 or 6.8. Szczesny is a 7 that in crucial games, finals, semi-finals, can be a 8.5. But only if he starts playing right now. So, what is better to invest on? In a player, in a goalkeeper that, okay, does quite well, he does good saves, but then also concedes normal goals. So, normal, he's not saving you. Also, he's not a disaster. But then, he's young.
But Tony, isn't that that's just what I just said? That he believes Szczesny's ceiling is higher than Peña's.
I would say that it's clear that Hansi Flick's decision is not based on he thinks today, January 27, Szczesny will perform better than Iñaki. I don't think it's that. I think that he's ambitious and he's focused. Then when K games arrive, the percentage of the receipt of the succeed, it's not only about sportive skills, but about experience and mental skills. And Hansi Flick knows that when finals arrive, it will play a bigger role those who have experience. And he thinks that he needs to play Szczesny now if he wants, when K games arrive, to have an insurance in the goalkeeper, in the goal, with Szczesny, who has played several finals and important games. That's why he's doing this, because if he plays Iñaki Peña, he cannot go with Szczesny at the end of the season in K games if he doesn't play quite often. For me, 90% of the decision of Hansi Flick is thinking on when big pressure games arrive, not because he thinks will do better tech than Iñaki against Valencia. He could also win with Astralaga, Cohen and Samuel Marsden against Valencia. It's because he needs to start investing in the future. In the future, I mean in the following months.
I think we agree on that.
I get that, Tony, and I think it's probably the right decision just about. I think he probably does need a run of games. But what I can't work out, Tony, is if you think that in these, well, obviously not so much the Copa del Rey games, but these 3 games that Szczesny's made mistakes in, if you think he's actually been good when you're like, Barca have won all the games with Szczesny. They won in Benfica in spite of Szczesny, not because of Szczesny. You know, Valencia, he gave away a penalty, the Super Cup, he was sent off, etc.
No. Wait. He did a great save against Di Maria with 4-4. Oh, don't say despite of Szczesny.
It was a good save. It wasn't a world-class, incredible save of the season.
It was a good save. And that's the reason of Hansi Flick putting Szczesny. People says that facts are not giving him the reason. For me, facts are giving him the reason. Szczesny can be worse, but on crucial moments, extra time, he does the great save. So that's exactly what he's looking for. Iñaki can do great save in the first minute of the game, but then in the 93rd minute, oh, goal, no, yeah, the pressure, whatever you want. That's exactly what Flick wants. Someone who in the key moments will perform. And second thing, there is one thing that is true, because in Flick's plan, there is one thing that could put him in danger. Because if you bet on Szczesny, but he does too many mistakes, you are smashed, because then you cannot recover mentally, Iñaki. So that's the danger of the decision of Hansi Flick, that if Szczesny does too many mistakes, it's a plan with all or nothing. But luckily, the good point that I see is with Szczesny playing not really well, 4-5 against Benfica, 7-1 against Valencia, Hansi Flick can be thinking, if he's not yet with good rhythm and we are still winning, with 5-6 games more he will be in a better shape. So he can be thinking that he's lucky that the mistakes of Szczesny are not punishing the team. So that's also the most important part.
Yeah, or the logic could be that with Szczesny doing that against Benfica, Barca still winning 4-5. Perhaps we don't even need a goalkeeper. Why don't we just play 3 centre backs, stick Eric in there and help with the playing out, stick Araujo in as the goalkeeper and have his recovery speed. But no, fundamentally, I think it's a funny point, because I think me and Rick agree with Tony on the reasoning for Szczesny. I just think he goes a little bit overboard on his performances so far.
Yeah.
Especially at Benfica one, just because the net was probably still -1, even with that save from Di Maria. Tony, just moving on from... Well, no, Tony, just one more question on the goalkeeper situation. Just a yes or no answer. Because it was quite clear for me, but what it seemed from Flick, and I think he did need to draw a line on it, because it was getting every news conference the same questions. Teko Peña. He's kind of suggested, hasn't he, that Szczesny will play every game. He's not said for this season, but he said from now on, Szczesny's the number one until further news kind of thing. Because he needed to do that, I think, because it was just getting boring, the same questions every time.
He cannot say this. Because what if, for example, Tech commits 2 more penalties against Atalanta and 1 more penalty against Alaves, and then the team loses? He cannot promise this. Of course, in his head, but it's like this.
He insinuated it, and as that's the situation at the moment, and kind of like, stop asking questions. That's what it is at the moment. Obviously, if there's mistakes, he knows there's going to be questions again.
Yeah. He said, I think his words were, Tech's going to play the next few now. Yeah,
it's basically the insinuation is the gloves are Szczesny's to lose.
He said with the small mouth, I think he will play next games. Okay, please stop with this debate, because as per now, Szczesny is the number one, and don't ask me this every week. But he didn't say, yes, I made the decision, Szczesny is number one, because in my opinion, he's still a little bit afraid that Szczesny can kill himself, so he will need to count on Iñaki. So that's why he's giving a margin of not saying too loud that Szczesny is the number one.
Tony, just to go back just before Rick's ratings to one more thing Rick mentioned. What did you make of the Flick anecdote about him being most impressed with Gavi? Is that something you like? Does that show the camaraderie in the group, or is it something you would rather see the coach having more control? I think it's quite clear. I don't think it's a question of control really in this situation, because obviously it's quite clear Flick with the way he dropped Peña before, over being late, Koundé, etc. That he does have an element of control over the dressing room. But there has been some debate about it, and Rick mentioned it. What did you make of the Gavi situation? Him saying chuck Pablo Torre on?
No, for me it was good detail of Gavi with his friend Pablo Torre, and. So we need to praise it, because for sure it's good to see things like this. The game was already decided, so for me it's not that Hansi Flick needs to control. For sure he will do it when he needs it in terms of a score, but the game was already finished, so there's no problem. And regarding Gavi, we in the same way that sometimes I have criticized him for some attitudes that I have been told that he's not respecting in the training sessions, sometimes some of their mates, he has had some little battles or little fights with some of his mates in the last month because he was not happy with the situation, so he was too nervous in the training sessions. He had some attitudes that were not really good. We should also praise this one. So yeah, Gavi is special for bad things sometimes, but also for good things, as it happened yesterday.
Okay then, Rick, I'm ready for that shark 10. Let's hear your ratings.
There's no 10s. It was one player very close to a 10, but not a 10. Szczesny 6, Koundé 6.5, Eric 8. Good performance from Eric. it made a lot of sense to play Eric in this game, especially certainly when you approach the game, you think, Valencia will probably sit deep and so on. You think there'll be a tight block. Obviously, it didn't turn out to be like that, but his passing was still good. So was Pau Kubasi's 8.5. Lovely assist from Kubasi for Fermin Lopez for his first goal. Balde 8, Casado 7, De Jong 7.5, Lamine 7. Fermin Lopez for me, the standout performer, 2 goals and 2 assists. 9.5 I've given Fermin. Rafinha 7.5, Ferran 8, missed some chances, but I think his movement was important and he took his goal nicely. And then off the bench, Lewandowski 7, Gerard Martin 7. Nice. Martin did a nice setup for Lewandowski to try and get another goal, but the shot went wide.
Just back to Eric Garcia and for the faults that he does have, and just going back to the comment Tony made about Valencia's pressing, is there a better centre-half pairing to play against the press than Eric Garcia and Pau Kubasi?
Yeah, and not only this, Sam, not only this. Also, that we have to say that the pressure that they were doing was not even great. Because if you want to be brave, but do it well. They were not even pressing really high because at some point, Eric and Pau, they had a lot of space, a lot of time to think. So if you want to press, okay, kill yourself, but kill it with being elegant or being serious plan. Like yes, I'll go all in, but it was not the case also. They were like pressing but not really sharp, so disaster.
Just before we wrap up then, Tony, and before you head off on holiday and ignore all the transfer activity, can we expect anything in this last week? There's a surprise move has surfaced. Unai Hernandez, the Barca Athletic sort of attacking midfielder forward, moving to Al Ittihad in Saudi Arabia with Ramon Planes.
Yes.
Flick saying Eric Garcia's going to stay, saying Ansu Fati still wants to stay. It doesn't look like there's any movement on players like Pau Victor or Pablo Torre. We're going to have a quiet week?
I wouldn't be able to say that it's going to be quite weak. In my opinion, yeah, for sure, Eric will stay. There's no case anymore. Ansu, for me, even if what he says is that he's staying, for me, is not 100% decided. I mean, no, decided, yes, because in his head now it's decided. It's not 100% yet that he will stay. In the club, some people still trusts that he will accept a departure. Not Pablo Torre, not Pau Victor. At least now. Let's see if Pau Victor leaves on loan in case, for example, Rashford arrives. But my feeling is that all what's happening in Manchester between Amorim and Rashford is giving Barcelona extra time and extra money in terms of this battle between Amorim and Rashford. For me, is driving the problem into a point in which United would even prefer to give him on loan and covering 60% of his salary instead of having him in the dressing room. And that's helping Barca a lot, because in case Barca finally gets a little bit of money to cover only 30-40% of salary, all these deals that we have criticized from Barca, like, hey, what the fuck are they doing, paying all the salary to Lenglet or Ansu to go on loan? This time would be the opposite. Would be Barca the one to take benefit. So, in my opinion, let's see. But I wouldn't say it's that Rashford's case. Not that.
Interesting. Let's see what happens this week. Still 1 week to go in the transfer window. We'll be back later this week on Patreon after Barcelona's Champions League game at home to Atalanta. The second of 3 straight home games. The third being Alaves on Sunday before they travel to Valencia in the Copa del Rey next midweek. In the meantime, stay positive.